Order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support?
Support.
Thank you. Julie?
Mr. Bucky?
Yes.
Mr. Dracos?
Yes.
Ms. McQuiston?
Yes.
Ms. Mermel?
Yes.
Mr. Singer?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor?
Yes.
And Mr. Weedman?
Yes. Motion's approved, and I understand there's no public comment tonight, so we will move on to our work. And this is the third of 3 nights of our first round interviews with our final 2 first round interviews. And tonight, we'd like to begin by welcoming Benjamin Kirby for tonight's first interview. Let him get in here and get connected. There he is. Welcome. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, and I was talking with you, but I didn't realize I was going to be instantly muted and instantly muted video. So I was talking to myself a little bit, so I got a little...
Got it. A little warm up.
Right.
All right. Well, on behalf of the Lake Orion Community Schools Board of Education, I'd like to welcome Benjamin Kirby this evening to the interview for the position of Superintendent of Schools. Mr. Kirby is currently Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services for South Lyon Community Schools in South Lyon, Michigan. And I'd like to take a few moments to describe our format. The interview may take up to 90 minutes, although it may not take a full 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give Mr. Kirby the opportunity to ask questions of the board and or make a final closing statement. Trustee Scott Taylor will let us know if time's becoming an issue and there's a need to watch our time so we can stay on pace. As the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, it will be doing so through the lens of the candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify the candidate that best fits this profile, which board members have at hand. Audience feedback may be submitted through an online form found on the district's homepage. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education as representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process. While we are not seeking recommendations as to which individual should be hired, we would like your input as to the strengths and reservations about each of the candidates. All right, so that being said, I'll start the questions off. Mr. Kirby, welcome. While we've had the opportunity to review your application materials, those from watching from home have not. Please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in the position at this point in your career.
Well, thank you, and certainly feel free to call me Ben or Mr. Kirby, either one, but not Benjamin. You don't have to address me at all. So just a little bit about me. I am, first of all, very honored to be here with you this evening in your homes. I appreciate the fact that you wanted to talk with me a little bit more about this position. I'm a lifelong educator. I started out working in the grounds crew at Lyon Public Schools back in the early 90s. I then worked as a teacher. I was a middle school teacher. I taught sixth grade, ELA and science, and I also coached for 20 years while I was in Ionia Public Schools. During that time, I also did some refereeing of basketball, which I still do some of that now on the weekends when I have time. From being a sixth grade teacher, I then moved into the middle school assistant principal position in Ionia. That is probably the position that really taught me how to treat people with dignity and really listen with empathy and really understand the whole big picture when making decisions and frankly working with conflict. From there, I then became the middle school principal in Ionia. I was a middle school principal for a year, and it was great. After 5 years as an assistant principal, we were able to continue some of our programs that we put into place to really support students. And after a year, we ended up having some vacancies in the district. I was appointed to the high school principalship, and that was a great experience for me, certainly for my career development. Very unique. I graduated from Ionia. It was actually a different building because the new high school was built through a bond issue. So I came back to be the principal, and in that building, I had 5 different teachers that were my teachers back when I was a student. So that was a great dynamic for me, and it was awesome because they were some of my biggest advocates, and it was just a tremendous experience. After 3 years of being high school principal, which was a great experience, and I loved every minute of it, the associate superintendent position in Ionia became available. I interviewed for that position, and I was in that position for 11 years. In that position, I was in charge of human resources. I was in charge of school improvement, teaching and learning, safety, the day-to-day operations, oversaw transportation, just about everything. In a mid-sized district, you have a lot of opportunities to lead, and I definitely had that. I did make the recognition in my career that it would be a great move for me to move to another district. I want to be a leader in a large school district. I did some research, talked with some mentors, and decided after 24 years in Ionia to move to a larger district. And after some research, I chose South Lyon Community Schools to apply. That was the one district that I applied to, and I was successful in earning that position. And I've been there for the last approximately 2.5 years as the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. That's been great. So in that role, my responsibilities, I oversee all of the human resources, all of the functions, labor negotiations, contract interpretations, all the benefits, and then also under my responsibility, and I have 3 people that work in my office, we're fully in charge of all the communication in the district as well. So we, again, have lots of opportunity to lead in that current position. Another passion that I have is being a father. I'm a father of 3. My oldest, Garrett, has graduated from Grand Valley. He's 23. And then I have Parker, who is in the honors engineering program at Michigan State. He'll graduate next year. And then our baby will be heading to Michigan State next year as a freshman. So growing up, my father left before I was 1 year old. So my mother raised my brother and I basically on her own, a few male role models in and out. But from that, I really learned quality work ethic. My mom worked for the same organization for 42 years, finished as a vice president of a local bank. I'm the first college graduate from my family, and it's something that really instilled in my kids that they could do anything that they want, regardless of where they came from. So when applying, I did a lot of research on Lake Orion Community Schools that it was important for me to find a district that matches with my educational philosophy, really the caring environment that is, in your reputation. I was there Friday. I got an opportunity to go to a number of the buildings, and it really hit me how all the signs said, "Congratulations, graduates 2020." and it wasn't just at all of the schools, but it was in the community, and it was just, it really gave me that community spirit that I'm looking for, and that I know is really going to be there with having everybody be all dragons. That's another unique situation within the school district, and everybody can really rally around our students at the high schools. And I know that Lake Orion is a district that has high expectations, high support of the students, high support of the staff, high community support, as evidenced by the passage of the bond and the sinking fund. I've been in education for 27 years, 20 of those years as an administrator. I look forward to sharing the work of my teams over the years. Look forward to sharing the vision that I have for Lake Orion Community Schools. I've worked under 8 different superintendents. I've seen a number of different leadership styles. Some of them I will emulate, and some of them I definitely will not. I believe that you can't do today's job using yesterday's methods and continue at the same level of success tomorrow. I think it's really, really important to grow. I'm here because I think that Lake Orion Community Schools is the right district for me to be the superintendent. I've maintained consistency in my career, as I've talked about, as far as the districts. I think that's the best way to support students, best way to support staff and community. I've grown while in those positions, having multiple roles. As I had said previously, I've been a central office administrator for 13 years. Lake Orion is a destination district for me, one that I'd be proud to call home. And I love the fact that I get to serve in a public school, and would love to serve Lake Orion Community Schools. And as your superintendent, I would be sure to honor the past as we grow into the future. And I'm looking forward to our conversations this evening.
Very good. Thank you. Given the immediate challenges of being ready for COVID-19 coronavirus contingencies, and what is likely to be a significant reduction to our foundation allowance, among other more typical challenges, please tell us how you would hit the ground running on July 20th and ensure that we are fully prepared for a positive and productive year.
Yeah, certainly COVID created some opportunities for flexibility, growth in all districts across the state. And you'll notice in the transition plan that I provided you, whether you're looking at it as the electronic book that I provided or the PDF, under the student achievement and engagement piece, you'll see that one of the first things that I want to do is debrief with the teaching and learning department to identify some of the lessons learned through the COVID. And I know that your district or Lake Orion has really worked hard. I see that there's currently a plan that is laid out as far as some descriptors of what it would look like if we were to go back traditionally, or in a hybrid model or in a remote model. And so it's going to be really important for me as the superintendent to understand what work has been done. And that's really important to me. We have completed some surveys in our district. I would think that probably happened at Lake Orion as well, to try to get a better understanding of how families feel about school. The quick response is, oh, everybody wants to have face-to-face instruction, but that's not necessarily the case. We have over 1,000 students that are looking for some online learning, and we have 8,800 kids at South Lyon, but over 1,000 kids want to have some online learning. So we're looking at a couple different methods of delivery, and having certainly the face-to-face, but we have families that are concerned about coming back, some that don't want to have to wear masks, and all of the different mitigation strategies. So it's going to be really important. As far as committees, I think it's important to understand what committees that have been put into place to make decisions at Lake Orion. That will help with moving forward. Again, I know that there's been a lot of work done, and that cannot be discounted. That has to be fully considered and talked through. So me as a superintendent, I know the process that has been in place, the strategies that the staff has learned through this, the strategies that they would be expected to use moving forward. Looking at the contracts, obviously. Mr. Arnett in Human Resources had a role in this to make sure that contracts were followed and so on. So it's going to be really important to have that understanding. Looking at the vision or profile of a graduate that the high school has, are all of those elements still going to be addressed? I think that's really important to not lose sight of that as we move forward. In the whole enrollment piece, I think, that's one of the big caveats that's out there. There's the instruction piece, but how many families want to come back in the normal environment, and how many families want, to have all of the hybrid, or they want to have the remote learning. I think that is really a big piece that we're all going to struggle through and have to really work hard to identify. The governor put out today that she'll have, you probably saw that, but on June 30th, she plans to roll out minimum recommendations, and then districts obviously can, do more from there, but strongly encouraging the face-to-face instruction or in-person instruction. Some other things to know is, how are we going to put visuals in our buildings to, have the social distancing? Are we going to be putting dragons on the floors? Are we going to be putting X's on the floors, to identify how people space out? Will we be using the sneeze guards? How is our food service going to be delivering their food? Are they going to be pre-packaging, or will they be serving students so that they're the only ones touching the utensils? So those are all of the things that I'm sure have happened, and the discussions that have been in place, and those are the types of things that I look forward to learning as I jump in right away and lean on the leaders that are currently there. I know a lot of work has been done. By the time the superintendent gets there July 20th, things are really going to be rolling. And as far as the financial impact, again, hopefully we get through and don't have a reduction for this year. But I really think a big key is going to be the enrollment piece moving forward financially, and really using the funds that are available through FEMA and the CARES Act to make sure that we're putting all of the elements into place to keep our students and our staff safe.
Good, thank you. Based on your research of Lake Orion Community Schools, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? And how would your background and skills help us to address these challenges?
Okay, thanks. So public schools are definitely, a microcosm of society, and it's really evident that there is, at this point in time, we really need to be looking at, equity in our community, equity across our state, across our nation. That definitely will be a challenge as we move forward that must be addressed. Looking at Twitter, noticing that we have a diversity coordinator at Lake Orion, really shows some proactive leadership, and I'll be very interested to understand and know what it is that has occurred up until, July 20th for that particular cause, what type of participation we have, what types of activities are they doing. And that is something that, working in Ionia is different than working in, South Lyon Community Schools. There's much more diversity in that type of environment, the middle, medium-sized district. And a lot of it's economic diversity, but it's about asking a lot of questions to make sure that we're not creating barriers for our students, whether they're inadvertent or they're intentional. And the behavior that we exhibit to make sure that has been addressed. And I've been part of that over time, mostly with economic diversity, not as much with ethnic diversity. One of my references there, Dr. John Dieter, he's worked with J. Marks in Oakland County. Many are familiar with him, but they have worked in the Lansing area to really emphasize diversity, and he's somebody that I've worked with and will certainly continue to work with closely. The bond and and the sinking fund with the infrastructure. I think that's, it's just awesome that the community supports that. And with that comes an intense responsibility to put the things in place that were intended, that were voted upon, and celebrate those things. So I think that that's something else that we really need to, that could be seen as a challenge, because there's a lot of work being done. There's a lot of moving parts. And I think that that's got to be a major focus in the district. And certainly I talked a little bit about the enrollment. Next year's enrollment is really, it's really up in question. We saw how society, our governor slowly rolled things out, and there's a lot of families that have discomfort. And so as we move forward, that will continue to be a challenge to try to get some of those families back, getting their trust back, in order to, see that we're putting the mitigation strategies in place and keeping everybody safe. Certainly when I look at enrollment in the district over like the last 10 years, as we all know, it has slowly declined. Not in a major amount, but it certainly has. And there are some schools or some students going to some neighboring schools, and I'll learn more about that when I'm meeting with people through my transition plan to better understand, is it programming, is it relationships, is it athletics? Those are typically the three things that really motivate people. Obviously location is part of that too, but those other three things really motivate people that might be disgruntled in some way as far as leaving the district. And with enrollment, when I look at this year's enrollment, grades 5 through 1, with one exception, really are small cohort classes for enrollment. And when we look at the 6-12 enrollment, those are much higher. So as 6-12 graduates on, and our K-5 smaller classes move forward, it's going to be really important that we keep our understanding of where our enrollment is, obviously, because that's where our funding is.
All right, thank you. Our next category of questions is related to district relations, and Trustee Scott Taylor will be asking these questions. Scott?
Hey, Ben, thanks for being with us tonight.
Absolutely.
Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to this Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
Okay. All right. Yeah, definitely very important. Important for a superintendent, important for a Board of Education, and in building that trust, and as a district being part of the community, and vice versa. Visibility is really a key component to that. The visibility of me not only being at the school functions, but me being at community functions, and while I'm there, being approachable, being participatory in the respective events, really listening to people. It doesn't matter where I'm at. You're never off as an administrator. People always are going to have something to say, whether it be positive or constructive criticism or an opinion. Some of the things that have been used in the past that I really feel strongly about is the Superintendent Advisory Committee. And again, you'll see that in my transition plan under the building relationships in the schools and community section. What has happened in the past is that we brought in community members, business leaders, elected officials, and brought them in on a consistent basis. We got to the point where we were doing it once a month. And what we were doing with that is we were bringing these folks in so we could share what was going on in the schools, and they could share what they were hearing about what was going on in the schools. And it really helped us have a better understanding of how to serve the district. It also helped us understand who some supporters are. There's some innovations that can occur out of that when you start talking about business leaders and wanting to have students participate in their work, in their mission of their particular businesses. Also, you'll see that I look to form a student advisory committee for the superintendent. I think that is a component that we perhaps maybe take for granted. And I know that there's a lot of different groups and whatnot, but I really want to have a superintendent's advisory made up of students from the learning options as well as the high school, so that we can understand how we're serving them. And I think that that's going to be a really important piece in developing that relationship and making sure that we're addressing appropriately the profile of a graduate. As far as the seniors in the community, that's such an important group to remember. Strategies in the past, we've had senior luncheons. We did it about 7 times a year, basically. And what we would do is we would basically have a lunch for the seniors, and then on top of that, after a lunch, then we would have a program, typically a student program or a program where they learned a little bit of something about the school district. So that way we can really stay informed with that group, and again, be able to serve them and help them understand how they can serve us as a district. I think it's really important to do parent satisfaction surveys. That's something that has been done in the past, and I think that that's really important to understand, because we can get complacent with our success, and really the success can really inhibit growth if we don't continue to get feedback. So I think that piece is really important as well. Having quarterly newsletters is something that I implemented at South Lyon Community Schools when I first got there. There was one basic newsletter that went out at the beginning of the year. It really was about compliance, and so we moved that into a quarterly newsletter, and that helped us celebrate the things that are going on in the schools and in the district, and also announce events. Also, we increased the communication from the schools to weekly. That wasn't in place before, and certainly emphasize some social media impact within our schools as well. Being really consistent in our communication, no matter what group we're working with, is really important. I think it's really important as a communicator, when you're build trust, is to acknowledge the wrongdoings. If something happens that you wish wouldn't have happened as the district leader or a community member, I think it needs to be acknowledged, publicly. That's how you build trust. You move forward, and you work through the adversity at that point.
Awesome. Next question. Please describe how you have successfully engaged district stakeholders, including those directly involved with the school district, as well as others in the community, and share how this was of benefit to your district.
All right, great. So I'll kind of work backwards. In South Lyon, we partnered with MEMIC Insurance, and they have some monthly giveaways, and that was something that we were able to put together. And so those giveaways are actually for our teaching staff. So each month that it's basically, they don't have to do anything other than participate, and they potentially could win. Could be stand-up desk for their students, could be some sort of technology. There was a variety of things, and they did that on a monthly basis. We also partnered with Gallagher. I believe that Lake Orion uses Gallagher as well, but Gallagher has been a great partner in supporting our staff through the COVID pandemic. They have put together some weekly documents for support, emotional support, mental support, financial support that we've pushed out to our staff. And that has really helped people. Certainly the social emotional side has been really difficult for people. I was the Rotary president when I was in Ionia. And while in that role, we really developed a strong level of scholarship giving. We did that back to our high school students. We scholarshiped 5 high school kids annually. We also, during my leadership, we started up an Interact Club at the high school. And again, that is something that directly impacted our students. We also added a bike tour, which was a community event. It was the first time that we had done something like that, but it was, if you're familiar with like the Tour a Day Livingston, something similar. There's some river trails there in Ionia, and that's really what we did, and that really helped us boost the scholarship giving that we were able to do. Also, we did spaghetti dinners, and we had kids participate in that, help serve within the community, and that was really, really important as well. At South Lyon, I just recently was able to secure a relationship with the Suburban Collection car dealership. They are sponsoring our Teachers of the Year starting next year with a free car for 3 years. So that's a partnership that we just recently got just before the closures, as a matter of fact. Had ORS, Office of Retirement Services, come in to work with all of our new staff to understand the plethora of retirement programs. Those decisions are difficult, especially when you finally get your first job and you have a limited number of days and you got to pick one of the 30 plans, and so ORS was willing to, and they hadn't done it before, and it was the first time that they did it, but they came in and they basically explained the nuances of the different programs, and that really helped. We also partnered with Lowe's, and they helped one of our elementary school families. They were really struggling with access, handicap access, and they came in 2 days and basically built a ramp and removed some walls and opened up some doorways for the family to have better access. Also have done a number of dinners and things like that in the community. Again, there's money that goes back into our schools. The South Lyon Education Foundation is something that I've worked with in South Lyon. They've had various activities, whether they be the fashion shows. Bought those tickets for my wife. I didn't attend on my own. And then also they had pub grub crawls at local restaurants. So I participated in those as a worker as well. And all those go back to support students. So all those funds.
Awesome. And my last question for you: how do we create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically and aligning our operating plans to achieve strategic outcomes?
All right. Could you read that for me again, please? I apologize.
Certainly. There's a lot of big words in that one. How do we create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically and aligning our operating plans to achieve strategic outcomes?
Gotcha. Yeah, the words weren't that big. I was just trying to capture them all. That was my dilemma. So I appreciate you repeating that, Mr. Taylor. So when we're working through district-wide plans, and like I said, I've been part of strategic planning a couple different times in my career. And I've also been part of district school improvement planning, as well as building school improvement planning. And really the big piece is the data review. And it's not the data review at the end, but it's the data review all the way through. And you're constantly looking at the data, making adjustments and whatnot, and certainly listening to the voice of the stakeholders that are part of your committees. It's really important to monitor the successes. It's really important to evaluate as you're working through all of your processes, and it's really important to celebrate when you achieve your goals. When you make small gains, when you make large gains. I think celebration is something that is forgotten. I must admit, though, I think that your communications, public relations department has done a wonderful job of celebrating some of the things that are going on in Lake Orion schools. And I think you certainly have a culture of this way as far as continuous improvement. And ultimately, we all have to be committed to change and grow. And I think that that's something that also is embedded in the culture at Lake Orion Community Schools. But we have to continue to challenge ourselves and continue to be willing to, get to our growth edges and push ourselves a little bit.
All right, thank you. So we move on to the next group of questions, and they're related to political awareness. And Trustee Nate Butke will be asking those questions. Nate?
Thanks, Jim. Mr. Kirby, nice to meet you. Thanks for taking time to talk with us this evening. On the topic of political awareness, what impact do you feel the Every Student Succeeds Act is having on Michigan school districts?
Yeah, pretty poignant one, huh? Okay, all right, thank you. So yeah, ESSA is one of those, when you look at it, Every Student Succeed Act, how do you argue that it's not great for kids, right? That's the goal, that's the purpose. And I think that you would, depending on where you were, would have a different, meaning where you attended school, what community you lived in, you'd have a different response to that. I think if you look outside of our districts, that the Lake Orions, the South Lyons, the Ionias, that it might look differently. So some of the things that I think are important to remember about ESSA is that it's a benchmark, it's a snapshot in time. It's really about comparing communities, comparing school districts. So that aspect isn't necessarily a terrific. I think when you look at the potential for equity, I think that there has been some equity addressed. When you look at some of the districts that really had a lot of challenges in front of them, might have been low. It might have been low student achievement. It might have been persistently violent schools. I think schools like that would recognize that it's made a difference for them differently than what it would for a Lake Orion Community Schools, because I do think that there has been some increases with the rigor that's expected for all districts. And so it's kind of pushing that into a community that might not have had those expectations. I think we have to look at the positives that came out of it with preschool funding. The number of dollars that got put into our preschools, you can't shake a finger at that, because anytime you can get kids in school at an earlier age, I think it benefits students and communities. The fact that your goal was 100% achievement for all kids and all in all the subjects. I mean, your school is an infinite game where the goals are constantly changing, but I think that kind of rubbed people the wrong way, and I think right away it lessened the validity that people felt. I think the fact that there's a testing focus, educators didn't love. Again, it's a snapshot in time. And then the whole accountability piece, accountability is essential for growth and improvement. But the accountability really that was put in place with ESSA is just all pretty much punitive. And so as far as the impact that it's had, I think, it just depends on the respective district and community. I know there's some kids that are getting an education today that wouldn't have had the same education 10, 15 years ago. So I think there's some real positives in that. Ultimately, the base issue of poverty really isn't addressed, and really until that gets addressed, a program like ESSA isn't going to be fully realized.
Thank you, appreciate it. What's your biggest concern regarding the political climate of education in Michigan? And as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits Lake Orion Community Schools and public education throughout the state?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly that is a role of the superintendent, and I think that you have a advocacy committee in place now, and I think that that's really important, and I definitely would be part of that. I think the biggest piece is really, it's kind of a big bucket, but just education appreciation altogether. When you look at the things that have that have happened to the workforce. There's been a lot of things that have happened to our teachers, happened to our administrators, and it hasn't really been by understood as practitioners as these decisions are being made, and the impact that it has on our workforce has really been difficult over time, and that's evident with our teacher shortage. And that is definitely real, and again, it depends on the district and how much you feel that, and then also really advocating for more local decision making. Education evaluations, that's another piece where they thought they were going to fix everything and just blanket that you've got to do this and that's going to make everything better. That didn't go well. As far as retention of third graders, I think that with a third grade reading law, or all students read by grade 3, I think again that falls under that bucket of education appreciation. So many of us were working on that. That was a goal anyways. Why do we need legislators to tell us that if a student can't read in third grade, that they have to stay back and repeat everything? And so the whole retention piece, and certainly advocating for funding. I think that it's obvious. There's been plenty of research the last couple of years. The School Finance Collaborative has certainly, opened up, some eyes and kind of given a little bit of a roadmap as to how to successfully do these things. And I think that, funding would be a big piece of this as well. And the advocacy committee that's in place, I really look, forward to understanding that more. I saw Superintendent Giannopoulos' presentation at MASA, and it was very interesting. And again, I look forward to the details of that. And certainly the Tri-County Alliance is a powerful voice as well that I would be part of, that would help advocate not only for Lake Orion, but across the entire state. So really the big bucket would just be appreciation of education with all those things within it.
Thank you. Last one in this section. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
Well, I think if you look at the number of teachers, as far as again, the whole purpose of it was the theory behind it was they were going to, for the lack of a better term, make it easier to remove ineffective teachers. Well, when you look at it, again, most districts were doing a quality job of growing teachers and working with teachers and helping with career counseling if they weren't successful teachers. So right away it came with really low morale. Anytime you're telling everybody this is what you have to do, and there's not a whole lot of say in it, certainly from the teaching profession, and that was at a time when there was a lot of other things going on. There was a lot of hit that our educators, that our teachers took at that point in time. And it's really about teaching and learning and the tools to adjust, in the classroom and the local assessments. The fact that, you have to have 40% of the rating, it's just too high based on a standardized test. So, I mean, the overall impact that it's had on teacher performance, I don't even think it's measurable, and I don't think you've been able to find, or I've really seen anything that would tell me that it's that it has been effective. I know Lake Orion evaluates teachers every year, and I think that's great. I'm sure you probably did that before you were told you had to do that. And really the tools that we're forced to use were teaching and learning tools that were really valuable. When Charlotte Danielson put together her tool, it wasn't about evaluation. It was about teaching and learning. And that was one of the tools I was responsible for figuring out which tool we were going to use. And I actually had quite a long conversation with Charlotte Danielson herself. We had a conference, and then she actually provided her phone number, and we talked, and she just flat out said, I never put this together to be an evaluation tool, and we're just trying to figure out how to make it happen to get in the market. And, really, it was about teaching and learning, and that's what's really important in a classroom, not an effectiveness rating.
Thank you.
All right. Our next group of questions relate to leadership attributes, and our secretary, Dana Mermel, will be reading those.
Hi, Ben. Nice to meet you. Thank you for your interest in Lake Orion. My first question, here I go. Please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you may vary from that style.
All right. So leaders' influence, I think that's really important. And leadership is situational. And as a leader, you have to be adaptive. You know, my leadership style is it's collaborative. I really like to get input. You know, I've been called and believe that I'm a servant leader. I really try to mentor and coach people and be really supportive. I think that it's really important to bring in all those that are impacted to understand. So as far as the time I deviated from that, this pandemic had a lot of opportunities in all school districts. I had mentioned one of my roles was communication. So I'm the one that writes all the communications for the superintendent currently that go out on a weekly basis. And so I had been waiting for our food service provider, our food service person, our director, to share with us what the plan was. Well, we had been talking about it all week, the importance, and it was at our cabinet level. And I do not oversee food service, but we were talking about how imperative it was that all of our children had access to lunch and breakfast during this time. We are in a district that has a lot of free and reduced lunch, and we don't have the summer program and whatnot, but we felt it was important that was going to happen. So we were told all the way along. And so kind of fast forward on I was supposed to get the communication piece, the elements to put in the communication on Friday. I never got it. So Saturday morning, I reach out and try to find out what is going on. Why did I not have that yet? Because we needed to get that information out. Come to find out, the food service director had decided that they weren't going to provide lunches during the pandemic and hadn't shared that with anybody. And she made an arrangement to take all of our stock to a local food pantry, and the communication was going to be to tell them when the food pantry was open. To me, that was a time that I needed to make a decision for what was imperative for our students. I simply said that, we've been working through this, all week. This isn't acceptable. We're going to feed our kids. We have to feed our kids. I made the decision that day that we were feeding all of our kids. And I told her that she is going to create a plan, like we had talked about through our cabinet, that we were going to feed all of our kids. So we worked through that awkward moment and the realization that we have a moral imperative to feed kids. And so by Sunday, she and I had worked together on a plan. Of course, the food had been donated already, and so we had a delay of a week. But that was a time that I stepped forward and said, no, I didn't get the collaborative voice and whatnot. I had to make a decision at that point in time because that was what was right for students. And then, moving forward, I was there most Wednesdays, definitely at the beginning. I was there helping pack lunches, help putting them on the buses, help delivering them in the cars. I took the lunches to we had some families that were infected with COVID-19. I contacted the health department, said, what safety measures can I put in place? We want to make sure to support these families. I did all those deliveries. So, that was part of the leadership as well, knowing that wasn't something that was necessarily embraced at the time. But we did it because it was the right thing to do for students, and everybody's very appreciative. We served over 15,000 meals every Wednesday, and we'll do that through June 24th.
Okay, thank you. How do you lead in situations where you don't have official authority over the people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
So again, leadership is about influence. It's not about position. Bosses command, and leaders are catalysts. They're influencers. They're relationship builders. As a leader, you really have to be vulnerable, be courageous at times. As far as, my experiences with that, yeah, I talked a little bit about being the Rotary president. When I was Rotary president, I had no authority over, the mayor. I didn't have authority over the chief of police, and all the elected officials. In fact, my boss was a Rotary member, and I certainly didn't have authority over him or her, depending on the year. But really, it's about still having that vision and goals as that leader. If you are the leader of that group, and what are some action steps that the group derives, and what's the accountability to make sure those action steps are in place. That was really the piece that was really important, was the communication and then really making the sacrifices and giving hope for your vision for your group. During my tenure as the leader of Rotary, we started out, we had 32 members. I finished with 43 members in the year. So we grew pretty substantially. And then from there, I also continued on leadership, and I did a mentoring program and whatnot that we put into place, but I continued to have my leadership. But that would be an example. I've had other situations, district school improvement, for example. I've got, parents in that group. Obviously we have school personnel, I have students in that group. So it's not really about authority by position. So those are the other pieces that I talked about that help you be a quality leader.
Great, thank you. Okay, the last question for me. What are the key elements of a high-functioning board and superintendent governance team relationship? And what are your plans for establishing and maintaining this in Lake Orion?
Yeah, so certainly I'll go back to the transition plan, and you'll see there's a whole section on district governance. Super important. No organization can overcome the constraints of the leadership. And the leadership is the school board. It's me, it's my cabinet. We have to be able to communicate effectively. And that's a piece of the transition plan, to understand what does that mean to communicate effectively. And we'll flush that out as we have individual meetings. If you look at the activities, I intend to meet with each board member individually to try to understand what's important to you, what's best with communication. Want to know how to care for one another. I want to see the board care for each other, not just for me and me, not just for the board, but for each other, help each other. And through that, we'll build trust, but we have to be able to be vulnerable at times. I would anticipate us training together, whether we're using MASB, MLI. There's another group out there that I've had experience with called the Flippin' Group. That is just an amazing group for building relational capacity, made a strong impact in my life. We'll have work sessions again with my transition plan. You'll see that in there, but work sessions, certainly meetings with the board president to try to really understand, okay, how am I communicating with the board? How's the board going to communicate with me? How does the board communicate with each other? Those are all pieces that will, unfold as we grow together. And I think that that will be something that's exciting, and I look forward to that. I do have a number of mentors that I can lean on across the state, whether it be in West Michigan, Northern Michigan, Southern Michigan, but I do have a number of people that I would call mentors that I would work with as well, as far as building board relationships stronger and problem solving and things of that nature.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the area of instruction and curriculum, and the questions in that area will be asked by our Board Vice President, Birgit McQuiston. Birgit?
Good evening, Ben.
Good evening.
My first question for you this evening is, what experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
I mentioned early on that I had extensive work experience in Ionia. And when I finished my work in Ionia, we were at 63% free and reduced lunch. So there was definite economic opportunity there, or definite opportunity to close achievement gap with the low SES group. So one of the pieces that we did, and we worked collaboratively towards the end of my time at Ionia, we had a collaboration with My Blissey to implement NTSS in our elementary buildings. But one of the most successful pieces that we did in the elementary is we developed what's called a just right instruction. And so what we did is we had, so our elementaries, if you can picture K-5, we were a neighborhood school concept as well. So we had K-5. So we had what we called interventionist. When we were doing this, probably 7 years ago, there were more teachers that didn't have jobs, quality teachers that didn't have jobs. So what we did is we took certified teachers that didn't have jobs, basically because there wasn't, any available. And there were a lot of elementary teachers. We hired them in, and not directly into our units, but we hired them in. And so we had 4 interventionists at a respective building. And I'm thinking one of the larger elementaries right now in this example. So we would have those 4 interventionists, and then the 2 classroom teachers, and then you have your 50 kids. So during the just right instruction time, it was 30 minutes every day that we focused on the students, where they were based on their achievement through, we started out with Renaissance Learning, and then we moved to the NWEA. We would regroup our kids every 6 weeks based on their assessment in either of those 2 tools. And so then we would group our kids, and we would have a low number. We'd be somewhere between 6 and 10. We sometimes would have paraeducators assist as well. So during that just right instruction time, it was 30 minutes. There was no speech therapy going on during that time. We'd have our special ed staff also involved. Our special education students would be part of this just right instruction. So we do that 30 minutes for kindergarten. Then that team of 4 interventionists would move to first grade. And then those 2 first grade teachers and the 4 interventionists would break up those 2 classrooms. And then the next half hour, it would then move to the second grade. And so we did that every day throughout, but that was just right instruction. And we really saw some really good impacts, and we focused on, depending on the school improvement plan, whether it was mathematics or it was ELA. So that's what we did in the elementary. The middle school, my experiences in the middle school really drew my interest to the middle schools in Lake Orion with the team concept, because that was something that was really important for our success with working with our students to close the gaps. It was really about conversations that our teams were able to have because they shared kids. And so that really was important for us. And I see that that's something that Lake Orion's been able to hold on to. And I think that that's great. And I think that that's a great strategy. At the high school, we had what was called an achievement hour. And so, and they still do it today, but with the achievement hour, it is a 30-minute period that is tied to the 4th hour right around the lunchtime as well. So staff had the lunch and this achieve time. So we had the philosophy of the ability to retest kids after the kids made a sacrifice, meaning they continued their learning in some way. Kids could retest. And so some of this new learning that they got was during this achieve time. So as a science teacher, I would say, Ben, I want you to come in for the rest of the week. We're going to work on X, Y, and Z. And so I went ahead and during that achieve time, I would go to that teacher. So I could also say I need help in math. So I would sign up to go to my math teacher's block during that achieve time. So that was something that was really successful. And again, that's still something that was in place. The biggest piece was the management of who's supposed to be where, and we were able to develop a phone app. So we were able to take attendance in that way, and that really worked out well. Another piece at the high school level is adding a credit recovery. I've actually been part of that in both of the districts that I have worked. In Ionia, we had a higher need where we actually had somebody 5 periods during the day. And that really helped a lot of our kids graduate. And again, a lot of those students were students that were in the low SES group, and we were trying to close that gap. We also have piloted that same program at South Lyon, and I'm proud to say we just actually got the data yesterday that we were able to graduate 14 more kids on time that wouldn't have by having that in the second semester. They were able to achieve 1 or 2 classes during that second semester. So that's really something that made an impact as well.
Okay, thank you. My second question for you is, how have you balanced the need to challenge the status quo in education through innovation and reform with maintaining and building on what is already working?
So I keep finding myself saying so, I apologize. The listening piece of the transition plan is really important. And I think that's where I'm going to have a better understanding of what is, really important to the district and the innovations. I think that through program evaluation, that's how you get through the status quo piece. We want to make sure you have programs in place that are still being effective. What was the intended purpose? Is it still meeting that goal? The training that we have, we need to make sure we're continuing to sharpen that saw and address growth edges. There'll be a lot of innovation that will come from allowing teachers to be part and administrators being part of training. Getting out to other districts, I think, is another important strategy to see what's going on and is successful. And I think you have to have some autonomy in the classroom. I think we have to have some autonomy in the classroom to help our teachers give some say on how they would deliver instruction. I think that would be really important. We in Ionia, we did some classroom learning labs, and part of the purpose behind that was to see really great instruction in other classrooms. So in short and summary, it was we would have a group of teachers, and it could be K-12 teachers. It basically was when they were available, and we had people do it all throughout the year, but they would go in and they would sign up to watch a respective lesson, and then they would collaborate. And it was really great. We'd have kindergarten teachers literally having conversations with AP teachers talking about a 3rd grade lesson that went on, and they were talking about different strategies. So that was something that really put people out of their comfort zone and really helped with some innovation as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. And my final question for you tonight is, how have you addressed the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
Yeah, certainly with a merit curriculum, the career and college ready, there is certainly a roadmap for that, motivating kids, really exposing kids through opportunities to visit colleges. When you're talking about families that don't have graduates, it's really important to get kids on campuses and to see things and to see the things that they can aspire to. And that's some things that we did. Certainly that was most impactful in a community like Ionia. I've always been an advocate for CTE, Career Tech Ed. And when I was the high school principal, the Career Tech Ed Center was actually right in our building. And our enrollment and attendance in that increased. And part of it was advocating for more seats, knowing that it was really important for all of our kids. When it was first laid out that everybody needed to be college ready, there was no way that was ideal. I mentioned that I have a brother. I have a brother who he dropped out of high school. School wasn't for him, He ended up, later getting his GED, but he didn't need college. He's a terrific carpenter. Had nothing to do with going to college. And so there are students that have skills and they have trades that we have to be able to support, and you can do that through collaborations with other districts, with ISDs, with businesses. Again, I would look back at that portrait of graduate, to the vision of a graduate that we have at the high school, to really see how we're addressing that, and certainly celebrating acceptance to programs. When kids get accepted to programs, when I was in Ionia, we actually had a celebration. We had their acceptance letters up on the windows and the wall, and really made a big deal about it. We partnered with MyCan College Access Network, got some other grant opportunities where we had a college advisor that worked alongside our counselors, and that really helped. So both are incredibly important, and I definitely have experienced success in both of those areas.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next area of questions is in the area of finance, and our treasurer, Jake Singer, will be asking those questions. Jake?
Hey, good evening, Ben.
Good evening.
Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
So I mentioned that I was in a central office for 13 years. And so with that, there's a lot of collaboration amongst cabinets, and we constantly, especially over the last, 4 or 5 years, have been talking about budgets and whatnot. So constantly giving input to our director of finance as far as building budgets, where we're at with expenditures, the differences with our HR hires compared to, retirements, providing that data. Obviously, with having 85% of a budget, which Lake Orion is, I think it's about 84.3%, I think is what my research showed. As far as expenses in an overall budget, it's really obviously important for an HR person to be involved in those processes, and I have been. As far as creating efficiencies in departments, that has been, again, another strength that I've had, just being so involved, just understanding what is going on. So then, we can address inefficiencies and include efficiencies, and talk with our director of finance about it and make sure that we're reflecting those types of things. I oversaw the state and federal programs when I was the associate superintendent, as well as all the title programs that go along with that. I've been part of budget reductions. They're very unfortunate. We've reduced a couple $1 million over a couple years when I was in Ionia. We're going through that right now. In fact, I spent frankly last night till about midnight going through all of our work and the pieces that we're having to move around because of all the reductions and the contract language and whatnot, and then the financial impact that it's going to make and the timing of everything. So been very involved with it as a cabinet member, as much as a cabinet member is going to be without being the director of finance.
All right, thank you. What opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? In tough financial times, what are your top 3 priorities?
It's a solid way to reframe that question. That was, I like that. So as far as priorities, when we're looking at it, I think you have to look at obviously the learning environment and the programs that we're offering our students. That's got to be the first priority. Everything's about students. The next piece, priority-wise, would be safety. Safety of students, safety of staff, the safety in our buildings. I think we would have to prioritize that. I do think that you would need to really look at the short-term versus long-term savings with some of the decisions that you're making. There are times that you might have a short-term strategy that you're using. In this environment might be one of those times where you're looking for a short-term strategy. There's an opportunity now to, delay paying FICA for over 2 years. And, that's a big number. Eventually you got to pay it, but it helps you in the short term. There's a work share program in our state that, I talked with our team about doing where it could really benefit employees as well as the district, especially this next month. And so again, priority wise, it'd be looking at some short-term versus long-term savings through that.
What ideas might you explore to develop more revenue streams for Lake Orion Community Schools? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district in your career?
Yes, certainly there's there are opportunities. There aren't a significant amount, obviously, as we all know, but working with ISDs, state and federal grants, I think is really imperative. There's a lot of grants that come out that people don't necessarily apply for, know about, and so that would be really important to do that. The bond is obviously an opportunity. I participated in all those things that I've mentioned, bond programs, as well as sinking funds. Those are opportunities, obviously, and I have been successful with that. We're currently going through a bond in South Lyon for an August election. Certainly having community partners. I talked a little bit about having the superintendent's advisory with businesses and whatnot. That is another opportunity where businesses are looking to partner, whether it be to pay for textbooks, pay for athletics, things in athletics. Those are examples that I have been successful with in the past. One of our members of our superintendent advisory is a very quiet man. I ended up, talking with him, kind of got a relationship with him. Next thing you know, he's paying for the stat panels on the scoreboard, bought all new padded seats for our gymnasium for our student athletes, and then also funded the Hall of Fame that we started up. So it's just about building the relationships and being in the right place and opportunities. There's endowments that people can tap into. That's another opportunity. And really the one that's there is student count. I talked a little bit earlier just about, student count, and, it's going down a little bit. There are two districts that we're losing most of our students to. And as I go through my transition, I want to better understand, why are we losing to those respective districts? If it's about location, that's tough to overcome, because Lake Orion is a large spread out district. If it's about programming, then, and we're hearing that repeatedly, I think that's something that we really have to address. When I was associate superintendent, again, we had a little over 3,000 kids. But if we had students that left our district, it started out with our administrators. I basically created lists, and our administrators basically had to tell me a story about why that student is no longer with us. And so if it was an opportunity for us, we would pick up and call. If it was somebody that was going at a neighboring district, we would call them up. And I typically was the one to do it, but I would call them up and say, I see that you're, enrolled at school X, and you left our school. Is there a program or something that we could offer that could continue our service to you and your student? And so that's another opportunity. Obviously, pupil count is imperative in school districts.
All right, thank you. Our final group of questions speaks to the area of staff and personnel, and Trustee Steve Dracos will be asking those questions. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Wheaton. Mr. Kirby, it's an honor to meet you, sir. Please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team, sir. Thank you.
I mentioned that I left Ionia after 24 years. Tough to do. It really drew me to tears, when I left. And part of it was the team that we built. And part of the piece behind all of that was that when you have a great team, you have a high level of trust. You laugh a lot, you share vulnerabilities, you share accountabilities, you coach through tough situations. We use the Flippin' Group, and I mentioned that earlier as far as training. They have a process called Capturing Kids' Hearts that really impacts the classroom environment. But I participated in a training called Leadership Blueprint. And for me, it was life-changing. I had mentioned to you that my father left after a year. When I got done with that, I had a connection with the trainer. And that trainer challenged me, and I can share a lot more about that, but that trainer challenged me to reach out to my father, who I hadn't heard from. And at that point, I'm almost, 40 years old, and he's challenging me to do this. And so I did that. But again, it was life-changing. I got done with that training. I went to our cabinet and I said, this is just amazing. It's sensational. We then had our whole cabinet trained. Again, we laughed, we cried, we were vulnerable with each other. We went through 3 days of training. We then offered the Capturing Kids' Hearts training to our teachers, classroom teachers, on what's called an open enrollment. We had 50 people like right now that jumped into it. They did the training. That next year, our middle school jumped in. They wanted to, as a school, be trained in Capturing Kids' Hearts. And then that following year, we ended up having our entire district trained in Capturing Kids' Hearts. And then from there, every new teacher that I hired went through that they went through the Capturing Kids' Hearts training, which is a 3-day training as part of their new teacher training. And what that did is that helped build a strong team with what was important. And it was about relational capacity. And when you talk about student achievement, the relationships that teachers have in the classroom are paramount. They're imperative, they're top priority. And so to really invest in that and to see that come to fruition, we finished our training that year. Flippin came in and addressed our entire staff, and it was incredibly emotional. I still have connections to this day with leaders in the Flippin group. But that is a great example of building a team and sustaining that, and really honoring the work that we were doing when we were serving students.
Thank you, Mr. Kirby. My next question is, please speak to your experience in labor relations and working with employee unions, and describes the nature of your relationship with your union leaders.
Great. So, yeah, in my role, obviously, I work closely with labor unions, and in the last 13 years in the roles I've had. One of the things that's easy to recognize is, as an HR person, the actual chair, the role in and of itself can provide some competing interest when working with labor groups, for sure. You'll see that one of my references is a labor president. I had a number of conversations, with her over this past week with bid bumping and reductions and everything. But really working closely during this whole COVID, I was calling them at least once a week, sending emails, just giving them updates, finding out what we can do to support. I really feel like I have strong relationships with our union. Our Teamsters during the pandemic actually agreed to do a letter of agreement to work cross classifications. So that meant our bus drivers were helping with food service, helping with unloading lockers. They were doing all kinds of work that they typically wouldn't have done, but they did that because in the last couple of years, we've really strengthened our relationships with that group, and they really have become a very servant part of our community. We meet with our teachers leadership group monthly. I currently have a weekly call set up with our president. We just recently went through some things where we, kind of hashed out some challenges that we had in our relationship, and we wanted to move forward. And part of doing that was communicating more regularly and sharing with each other when there were things that we wanted to be done different, and rather than holding on to those things. We've had our teachers union group involved in our continuity learning plan. That was my doing, making sure that they were part of that. And then obviously during the reductions, we're constantly talking with them. And one of the things that I do on an annual basis is that I will survey out all of the administrators that are direct reports to me, as well as my peers, as well as the union leaders. And I give them an opportunity to give me feedback to find out what types of things that I should continue to do, what kind of things I should stop doing, what kind of things I should consider doing. And then the other question to see how that I can better serve them.
Thank you. My final question is, how would you interact with central administrators and building principals in a district of our size of Lake Orion? And how would you strike a balance between giving them the support and independence they need to lead effectively while holding them accountable as appropriate and necessary? Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
Absolutely, thank you. South Lyon Community Schools is a district similar in size, just a little bit larger. We have approximately 37 administrators. When we have our administrators all together, which we've continued that work, we meet with them, and I facilitate that through this whole pandemic. We've been meeting through Google Hangouts and keeping everybody up to date. So it really depends on the climate. One of the things when I first came to South Lyon is I used the Google Hangouts right away, and that was new to South Lyon. So we too are very spread out. So we'd have situations where we need to get input from everybody, but instead, and it used to be that everybody would drive into a central location, drive back out, and have a 30-minute conversation and spend 2 hours on that 30 minutes. So I would set up these Google Hangouts that was new to them. And so it really is situational. I think it's important that you, as a superintendent, meet with your cabinet regularly. To me, every other week at the least. There are some of the strategies I've used was some stand-up meetings, even if we weren't meeting that week, just calling everybody in and just, hey, what's one thing you're working on? What's one thing I can do to support? We literally would stand, we wouldn't sit, just kind of give ourselves those cues that this isn't going to be a long meeting. We're not looking for a dissertation. Let's get to the point. Let's talk how to support one another. And I do think it's important, at least on a monthly basis, to have your full administrative team together, especially during these types of times, depending on facilities and setup. And certainly, again, through my transition plan and all of the meetings that I would have with the central office administrators, the principals, union leaders, I get a better understanding of what's in the culture now. And I think it's really important to know that, because I'm not going to be one to come in and just change things because that's the way that I do it. I think it's important to understand what's happening, what has been successful, and what types of things to address. I did that in every one of my transitions, the high school principal, associate superintendent, and my South Lyon position, these listening tours to really understand before I made any changes. So I think it's really important to understand what constructs are in place now for meetings, see how those are working, get feedback. Because they're in place, I can tell you that our building principals, everybody's going to have an opinion on that format. And so I think that there's an opportunity where we should be meeting with everybody to kind of go through the management type things. I also think it's imperative that we at least once a month be in a situation where we're helping address growth, some learning experience, whether it's a book study or some other type of learning, especially with our instructional folks. I know that was something that became very clear that I have continued to focus on in South Lyon. It was all the training that they were ever getting, our principals, was all about compliance, because we put in this program, that program, and they were clamoring for leadership. And so I've really worked hard to implement trying to grow our principals during our principal meetings, especially. So listen, learn, and then make some evaluations and then implement some strategies that I know are successful to help our team grow together.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. This brings us to the end of our questions. And at this point, if you have some questions you'd like to ask us, or if you have a closing statement you'd like to share with us, this would be a good time for that right now.
I've had an opportunity to do quite a bit of research on the district, and so my not asking questions isn't about having further interest.
Sure.
I think that the other pieces and our timekeeper would confer with me. I have about 5 minutes left, and it's really important that I finish with my closing.
Sure.
So if I could, I guess I would like to just move to that, if that's all right.
It'd be great.
Well, so I would just like to finish by saying thank you. Thank you to the Board of Ed. I know this is your third evening, and I'm sure they've been great meetings. You're meeting some great people. And also thank you to the staff for participating tonight. Whether you're eating dinner while you're doing this or you're taking notes or whatever it is, you made a commitment to be part of the process and you're to be applauded for that. And certainly to the community for being involved in the process. And ultimately, I'm confident there's students that are out there as well that are participating in this very important process. I'm really confident that I can be a great team member for Lake Orion Community Schools. I'm really looking forward to hitting the ground learning. My goal is the success of the district. Leadership is really about competence and character coming together as one, and I think that you'll find that I have both. You do checks with my references. Certainly our administrators that I work with closely would certainly give you some feedback on that. I've given you a lot of examples through our time here tonight and some of the experiences that I have. Just want to emphasize that I really value relationships. I've been called and feel that I'm a servant leader. I really value teamwork, listening, humor is really important to me. Obviously, this environment's a little bit different as far as that. Not that I claim to be a comedian, but humor is very important in building relationships with people. And certainly, I think it's really important as a leader to influence others so that we can support our students. And that's what we have to remember. That's what we're here for. I've talked a little bit about superintendent advisory committees. I really think that's part of the whole vision that I have about supporting the profile of a graduate and the graduates that come out of our high schools. Involving community with that and involving students. I think that's just really, really imperative. Involving seniors within our community and certainly our staff having a voice on how things, operate, I think is really, really important. The district is just a great place. So you guys know that. I know that. It's awesome. I've really, over my career, I've, worked hard to build strong relationships. They've been productive. I've continued to refine my skills over the past 27 years. The educational side of it, as far as, college degrees and that. I participated in the SUPS Academy, Superintendent's Academy with MLI, Horizon Leadership Academy with MASA. Those are the two programs that are out there for superintendent preparation. And we'll continue to grow as a district in the area of equity and also moving forward from this pandemic. We'll gain a lot of knowledge to navigate through those challenges. I think that we'll be able to inspire and as our students come back, really give them hope that they can be successful in this new environment. We'll definitely face some financial difficulties. I think that's very clear. I've navigated through that previously. I've been part of processes. I think ultimately when you're talking about finance, it's really about being transparent. It's about collaboration when we're building a budget, and it's about supporting one another because there's really tough decisions that have to be made, especially this day and age. I believe in curriculum innovation through staff voice. Again, through the listening that I plan to do with the district, not only the teaching and learning department, but we'll, as you see in the transition plan, I intend to spend time in the classrooms, hear from teachers, hear from kids. I want to know what it's like to be a student in our highly respected school. And I also want to make sure that we're supporting the social emotional needs of our students. I think that's just really imperative. My work with teaching and learning, school improvement, human resources, transportation supervision, athletic supervision, fine arts, maintenance supervision, negotiations, labor groups, policy regulation, my work with bonds, sinking funds, political advocacy, helping with budgets, state and federal programs, safety, working with community. Those are all things that I've done. And so I share all that with you, not to be redundant, but to share with you that I'm ready for this position and I'm ready to be committed. You each received from me an electronic flip book or a PDF. If you could you just turn to the last page of that in whatever format you choose? And the first thing you might wonder is why we allowed our son to wear that color of shoes, but you have to pick and choose your battles with kids, right? So I share this with you because through professional development, like I know who I am as a lead learner. I've really developed myself. I really understand who I am. And this page has the details about who I am and what's important to me. I have laid out here what my personality type is. As far as the temperament, you know, I'm a warm, considerate person, gentle, responsible, pragmatic, and thorough. And really, this description is about a caretaker, somebody that really enjoys helping others, and that is something that I really really like to do, is help others. I applied because I felt like I fit the profile well. And I'm really eager to be a part of the team and call Lake Orion Community Schools home.
Well, thank you very much, Ben. We appreciate your interest in the superintendent position here at Lake Orion. As you, I'm sure, are aware, we're in the process of interviewing 6 candidates. That'll conclude this evening. We plan to conduct our second interviews next week, and we will let you know tomorrow night after we meet if we'd like you to come back and share some more thoughts with us. Again, we appreciate your time. And thank you. Go ahead. You were going to say.
I was just going to say absolutely. It has been an honor and a privilege to have a conversation with you tonight, and respect the position that you're in, and you know, wish you the best and great school district, and you'll find a great leader. So thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thank you. Good night. All right, so we are right on schedule, 7:30 plus 2. And we will take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 7:42, and we will welcome our final interview candidate. So let's take a break right here. Everybody all set to go? Welcome Dr. Pamela Campbell as our second interview this evening. She's signing in, getting connected. Good evening. Can you hear us?
I can.
Great, great. Well, welcome. On behalf of the Board of Education of Lake Orion Community Schools, we would like to welcome Dr. Pamela Campbell to this interview for the position of Superintendent of Lake Orion Schools. Dr. Campbell is currently Superintendent of the Columbia School District in Brooklyn, Michigan. I'll take just a minute to describe our format. The interview may take up to 90 minutes. There will be 21 questions from the board. Toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we will give Dr. Campbell an opportunity to ask questions of the board and or make a closing statement. And Trustee Scott Taylor will let us know if time's becoming an issue and help us to stay on pace to complete it within 90 minutes. As the board hears from each candidate and weighs this critical decision, it will be doing so through the lens of the candidate profile that was developed with considerable input from our stakeholders. Our intent is to identify the candidate that best fits this profile, which board members have at hand. Audience feedback may be submitted through an online form found on the district's homepage. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the Board of Education as representatives of our community, we value and consider the input of our stakeholders in this process. While we are not seeking recommendations as to who or which individual should be hired, we would like your input as to the strengths and reservations about each candidate. So I'll begin with the opening question. Dr. Campbell, while we've had the opportunity to review your application materials, those watching at home have not. Please briefly review your background and share what causes you to be interested in this position at this point in your career.
Well, thank you very much. Members of the school board, staff, and community members, thank you for allowing me to speak with you today regarding the Lake Orion Community School. As a successful coach, I learned that it takes work and focus to shape a winning team. In a similar way, shaping the future of our students through a positive, collaborative education takes all of us working together with a focus on excellence. As a superintendent, I found that partnering with fellow educators, school board, and community members while focusing on excellence has resulted in an increase in student success. My experience as a school administrator is an excellent match for the qualifications you are seeking in a superintendent for Lake Orion Community Schools. I've served as an administrator for pre-kindergarten through 12th grade, including adult education, with involvement in all phases of supervision regarding the hiring process, strategic plan development, crisis plan revision and dissemination, board and staff communications and collaborations, and policy review. Curriculum alignment is also something that I've had an opportunity to do, along with bond passage, new construction, and renovation projects. I've worked in partnership with a business manager to ensure that the district functioned within budget while providing a quality education to all the students. As a school administrator, I've gained experience in improving public relations, partnering with parents in the community, and collaborating with teachers and support staff members. My focus on communication with the community has resulted in a positive increase in public awareness of our points of pride. Through the use of email, Facebook, Twitter, my blog, radio spots, and newspaper columns, I continually update our stakeholders regarding positive activities in our pre-kindergarten through adult education program. Participation in community groups is also important for a superintendent. And if I was selected at the Lake Orion Community Schools as the superintendent, I would participate in activities such as the Food Pantry Board, Kiwanis Club, Optimist Club, Chamber of Commerce. And currently I'm an American Red Cross volunteer. Part of your question was about why I'm interested in Lake Orion. When I drive into Lake Orion, it feels like home. My husband and I lived in the area and we love the area. I'm an excellent match to lead the positive impact that your school district has on the lives of the children in the area. So thank you for having me here today.
You're muted, Jim.
I apologize. Given the immediate challenges of being ready for COVID-19 coronavirus contingencies, and what is likely to be a significant reduction to our foundation allowance, among other more typical challenges, please tell us how you would hit the ground running on July 20th and ensure that we are fully prepared for a positive and productive school year.
Well, the loss of the sales tax revenue this spring as a result of the shutdown has had a negative effect on our foundation allowance for our students. This reduction in foundation allowance will necessitate the evaluation of every area of our district. It will require us to collaborate with teachers, parents, and community stakeholders and prioritize activities and programs while keeping our students as priority one. Looking at the budget, the foundation allowance and the resulting fund balance takes an intense focus during this critical time in the community. In addition to our partnership with the community and staff, we need to prioritize budgetary expenditures and double our efforts in increasing our revenue stream through grants. Additionally, I think we need to increase our student count. That would help us backfill our budget shortfall and the reduction in the foundation allowance. We also need to stay on top of our legislators and make sure that they hear that students are priority one. We need to partner with our business manager and with our directors and principals to make sure that we do the best for our community and keep students in the forefront all the time.
All right, thank you. And finally, based on your research of Lake Orion Community Schools, and what do you think, what do you believe are the 2 or 3 most critical long-term challenges our district will need to address? How would your background and skills help us to address these challenges?
Well, I think at this critical time, everybody faces budgetary concerns, and we need to evaluate our programs and activities. That doesn't mean that something that is reduced now is not brought back, but we want to make sure that we take a look at everything. The governor's Return to Learn task force will present their report on June 30th. We need to listen for any hint from our legislators and our governor for budgetary relief. In addition, we need to make sure that we tap into our community. I think our budget is the first concern. That is a long-lasting concern. If we look back years ago and the $470 was cut from our foundation allowance, we know that it took years to recoup that negativity. So the second challenge that I see for Lake Orion Community Schools is equity for all students. So the Lake Orion Community Schools mission takes care of that, providing an exemplary education for all students. So it's important to be front and center as we work together to equitably meet the needs of all students. That's everyone, pre-kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. This mission that you have set can go miles in promoting a positive school culture and helping adults to prioritize the needs of students. When we think about equity, we need to make sure that we let data be our guide. Well, data alone cannot change the systems to be more equitable. As we look at the trends, both nationally and in the school classrooms, that can serve as an objective starting point for us as we look at equitable education. The third challenge is an immediate challenge, and that is innovation. Innovation in education is very important. And one of the things that Lake Orion has done is been a leader in innovation in education. So it's very important to look at innovation. It encourages teachers and students to explore, research, and use tools to uncover something new, whatever that is, creativity. So involving in the community and the board is a very essential part of innovation. It includes constant collaboration with colleagues. One of the things sometimes we think about innovation is that it's just about technology. It's not just about technology. It empowers students to become lifelong learners and agents of change. So the first three long-term challenges that I see and priorities as we move ahead in Lake Orion are the critical need for budget revision, the importance of equity, and the impact of innovation of our schools and classrooms.
Thank you very much. Our next category of questions relates to district relations, and Trustee Scott Taylor will be asking those questions. Scott?
Good evening. Maintaining healthy relationships with school and community stakeholders is important to this Board of Education. Please share with us how you have gone about building and maintaining successful relationships with all members of the school community.
So building and maintaining healthy relationships with staff, board members, and community members is essential for a superintendent. As a superintendent, I've had the opportunity to learn from and collaborate with community stakeholders, board members, teachers, and administrators. Each collaboration has helped me to grow and develop as the leader of my district. My ability to work collaboratively and cooperatively with teachers, administrators, and community members has helped me to lead in the creation of a strong, cohesive educational entity. My experience working cooperatively with fellow community members involves, for an example, the bond issue that we passed. $30 million bond issue hadn't been passed in years, several failed millages, and it was very important. And so we learned to work collaboratively and work hard to make sure that we had all of the bases covered. We walked door to door. We involved community members. We made sure to involve the students as well as the teachers and the board members. And so that was one of the ways that I could, an example of collaboration with community. The other thing is I'm very visible and I maintain an open door policy. I'm visible in the school events and the community. My participation in civic organizations has helped me to build relationships with the community, and that helped when we went to pass our bond issue. I also, every place I go, I'm superintendent 24/7. I carry the mission and vision in my heart through all my involvement. I continually communicate through social media posts, newspaper articles, and my blog, as well as meeting people even in the grocery store.
Thank you. Please describe how you have successfully engaged district stakeholders, including those directly involved with the school district as well as others in the community, and share how this was a benefit to your district.
Well, I'm going to use the same example. Community members, I think, become engaged when there's an issue or a concern that makes a difference to them. During the bond issue, we reached out to community members. We gave tours through our school. They saw leaky roofs, really raggedy areas, I think. It was pretty sad that we had children in our school under those conditions. But I worked well with the community, face-to-face communications, door-to-door, community meetings, phone calls, web posts, newspaper column. And I developed a great team of people to get out and talk to our community members. So we had community members and staff members, administrators, and board members who all worked together to support the bond issue. Another example is as a part of the Chamber of Commerce Education Committee, I've worked hand in hand with the other members to reach out to the community through various chamber events and activities. One of the other things that we did to build a community through our school district was we had a quest. We were on a quest for a common calendar in our county, and we held community meetings, and we reached out through social media. We had face-to-face discussions, and we had open meetings, as well as used surveys to learn about the concerns of our community members. Engagement is also important with the student community. During the school year, I visit all the classrooms and make sure that I'm connected with the students through emails, as well as handwritten notes that I send to the students as they are highlighted in the newspaper. The other thing I did this year was I taught hands-only CPR, and that's not something most superintendents do, but I did that to maintain a connection with our junior high and high school students, just to make sure that not only did they know that I was a real person, but that I cared about them and I cared about their safety.
Thank you. How do we create a community and district-wide culture of continuous improvement, planning strategically and aligning our operating plans to achieve strategic outcomes?
Well, in a district, you establish a continuous improvement process. And so that process, in my background, has included staff members, teachers, board members, students, and community members. It's very important to include everyone. In addition to reviewing and disaggregating the data, we have looked at survey results to build a strategic plan focused on student achievement, teacher retention, and recruitment. Our strategic planning process included various stakeholders, including our school and district improvement teams, to create and operationalize a plan to continue to move our district forward. I've continued to keep our community and staff updated through our newsletter, our newspaper articles, and social media. The plan is dynamic with the ability to adjust it as we continue to review and analyze the gaps in our achievement data. So that's very important.
All right, thank you. The next area of questions is related to political awareness, and Trustee Nate Butke will be reading those questions. Nate?
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us. Really appreciate it. Would love to hear from you what impact you feel the Every Student Succeeds Act is having on Michigan school districts.
Well, thank you, Nate. It's been 4 years since No Child Left Behind was replaced with the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. Through the new law, it transferred decisions about school improvement and accountability to states and districts. So the Every Student Succeeds is the nation's main educational law for public schools and only the latest in a series of federal acts aimed to improve education. So ESSA is focused on holding schools accountable for how students learn and achieve. And it has propelled Michigan in their quest for making sure that we are holding our students and we are making sure that they achieve. ESSA aims to provide equity through equal opportunity for students who get special education services. The Every Student Succeeds Act also is supposed to track and report per pupil expenditures at the school and district level. It's about equity, not fairness. So the goal is spending across schools. It's not necessarily the same. And that's what Michigan is talking about. It should be equitable. Not all students have the same needs. And equity is not necessarily meaning the same to every student, but rather ensuring that students receive the supports and resources need to be successful. And as you look at Michigan and everything they do, even down to Section 31A, it is all about making sure that students receive the support. Now, Michigan is still in the process of working through the ESSA requirements and will continue, I'm sure, to focus on achievement through equity under ESSA.
Thank you. What's your biggest concern regarding the political climate of education in Michigan? And as our superintendent, how would you advocate for political action that benefits Lake Orion Community Schools and public education throughout our state?
Well, Lake Orion has been very influential, I think, with legislators as your community has reached out. So to protect our public education, we must partner with other organizations and community stakeholders to positively impact our students. Working as a team with fellow superintendents in my area, we've participated in an organized, focused effort to lobby our representatives and legislators to improve funding for our children. We schedule regular meetings with our legislators to provide them with the information necessary to benefit of our students. It's very important to keep them updated, whether it's through community organizers or through the school districts. It's very important. I encourage our community members to increase their communication with our legislators. If they don't hear from us, they'll think we're happy. Our staff members have worked proactively alongside me to encourage our community continue to be heard and repeat the need for our children to become first. And that's especially important during this critical time following the COVID-19 and the lack of sales tax revenue. So it's important that we continue to lobby our legislators and be in the forefront and make sure that we impact them by saying that children have to be priority one.
Thank you. Last one in this section. What impact has standardized testing and teacher accountability had on our education system in Michigan?
Well, first of all, I think standardized testing and teacher accountability was viewed quite negatively as far as almost a punishment. Like we weren't doing good enough. We have people who they work so hard to make sure that our children learn. And so although we're required to participate in standardized testing, it really only gives us a snapshot of the students on any given day. So testing has a place. It's important to gather growth, the data throughout this school year, but we can do it through classroom assessments and student learning objectives, along with programs such as NWEA or iReady. The accountability in evaluation, well, that's very difficult. It's difficult to reduce the results of standardized tests in our evaluation into that little 25%, or this year it was supposed to be 40%. How does that affect a teacher? How does that make them feel every day when they walk in? Oh, I have to worry about my 40% of my evaluation. Our students come from various backgrounds with different levels of abilities. And as part of the evaluation process in my district, we've used student learning objectives to measure growth. In this way, we view each student as they grow. In addition, we use focused evaluation and assessment to gather data on our students at various points throughout the year, just like NWEA or iReady does. As we return to learn at our schools this fall, it will be even more important to include in our plan social emotional learning. Our students cannot succeed if they do not feel safe, or they don't have connections, or they have concerns beyond the classroom. Really, in other words, we must educate the whole child. We must take into account more than the standardized test results to describe their abilities.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. As we move to the next group of questions, they are concerned with leadership attributes, and our secretary, Dana Marmel, will be asking those questions. Dana.
Hi, Dr. Campbell. Nice to meet you. Please describe your typical style of leading and talk about situations in which you might vary from that style.
So my leadership style is a combination. It's positive and collaborative and strategic. So I work cooperatively and collaboratively with the leadership team, the teachers and the staff members. So it's important to focus on the creation of a vivid picture of a team's future as you lead a team. So where it's heading and what it'll stand for. This vision can provide a strong sense of purpose and direction. So the team leadership is all about working with the hearts and minds of those involved. And that goes to positivity, I think. It's very important to be positive as you lead a team. So in addition, I'm transparent and honest leader. I work diligently and strategically to focus our district team towards success. The strategic leadership portion of my leadership style fills the gap. Effective leadership in a strategic way delivers the goods, basically, in terms of what an organization naturally expects from its leadership in times of change, especially in this critical time of change. Physical uncertainty, the district needs a strategic leader who's open and transparent, positive, and collaborative. Now, how you would vary from that, I think for the most part, I'm strategic, honest, transparent, positive, and collaborative every day. Very few times, with the exception of during an accidental fire in one of the areas where I was, when basically then I just told everybody what to do. We're not going to collaborate about where we're going. You need to get out. But other than that, in case of an emergency, I think being strategic, positive, and collaborative, and being transparent while you lead, and making sure that you're honest and open with your community, your teachers, and your students. I think that takes care of really everything a superintendent needs to do.
How do you lead in situations where you don't have official authority over the people involved? Have you been in that position before in your career? And if so, how have you handled it?
Well, that is an excellent question. Whoever came up with that question, that was a great question. So I think working with others to build an early middle college is a good example of my ability to collaborate with others and continue to lead while we focus on goals to improve educational opportunities for students. So as a group of us came together and we diligently focused our efforts on developing this great opportunity for our students. It's really been amazing for them. As we worked together, I was able to help delineate the parameters and make sure that we had equal access for all students within which we would grow this idea. So working strategically and collaboratively with others, we've been able to improve the academic environment for our students and give them educational opportunities that will last a lifetime. In addition to our early middle college, we also have a program for students that are focused on careers called Jack 3. And that was also in that same plane. Very important to work strategically, be a leader. Although I wasn't in charge of anybody in that group, we were all equals. So stepping out of your just sideline role in a group of people like that and taking a leadership role is very important.
Thank you. What are the key elements of a high-functioning board and superintendent governance team relationship? And what are your plans for establishing and maintaining this in Lake Orion?
Well, that's very important. It's essential because developing a productive and collaborative relationship, no matter with who, it takes time and hard work. But the success, in this case, of our children depends on us to grow and develop leadership of the district and to become a team. So initially, I would lay the groundwork for a firm base and a productive relationship with and between board members by meeting with the board and reviewing identified strategic goals and future desires for Lake Orion. Dream big kind of thing. I would work with the board members as a whole So in communities, I think depending on how you have your board structured, maybe in the committee setting or in individual meetings, as needed, maybe we need to make sure that it benefits the district, everything that we do, using our communication strategies. So I'd want to make sure that all board members were kept apprised of everything. I pick up the phone when it's important. I call my board members, I email them, I text them, knowing that all of that is something that I need to make sure that it's open communication. So building around the goals and plans for student success and developing strategies in an inclusive manner, I think that helps develop action steps that would form future educational programs. And working on programs and putting them together as a common goal will help the board and the superintendent form bonds and build relationships. As we dream big, as I said a minute ago, developing shared objectives and interests, thinking about innovation and where can Lake Orion go in the next 5 to 10 years. I think that will help generate a productive and high performing relationship.
All right, thank you. We move to the next area of questions, and they relate to instruction and curriculum. And our Vice President, Birgit McQuiston, will be asking those questions. Birgit.
Good evening, Dr. Campbell. My first question for you is this. What experience and success have you had with closing the achievement gap based on economic opportunities and other demographic factors?
Well, I've been a teacher in urban settings as well as suburban, and I've been a superintendent in poor rural communities. And so that is your task, is closing the achievement gap for those who maybe are more needy and have less, they come to the table a little bit behind. So working with the district improvement team, I've worked to close the achievement gap. We worked through Ruby Payne's Bridges Over Poverty to help inform us as we identified the negative impact of economic factors. We instituted a repetitive data review to identify gaps. We also did curriculum mapping to identify the gaps in what we were teaching and what they're expected to know. In addition, we worked with our curriculum mapping to assist us in our academic and core instructions to meet the needs of our students. We also added summer camps and summer programs that augment the learning needs of our neediest students, those students that are a little bit behind. As a result of our data-driven review and instructional strategies, including coaches for teachers, mentor coaches, along with interventionists to help our students succeed in reading. Last year, we only had one student at the 3rd grade who wasn't on grade level, just one. We received in the past, my districts using the same strategies received the Golden Apple Award and the distinction of exemplary. At Columbia, our high school has received honors from both the state and U.S. News and World Report. All of our awards are as a result of teachers, administration, and community and board members working collaboratively to close achievement gaps and increase equity.
Thank you. My second question for you is this. How have you balanced the need to challenge the status quo in education through innovation and reform with maintaining and building on what is working?
That's very important because a lot of things, maybe they've been around for a long time, but they're very effective and they're based on research-based practices. So working through our strategic plan, we focused on preserving what was working and increasing innovation in programming and educational opportunities. So during our school improvement process, we carefully evaluated our needs through data and gap analysis, along with mapping of curriculum, and studied programs that others have used to narrow their gaps. When we looked at other districts and we saw, well, this is a problem that we're having. Well, what did they do? How did they improve their scores? We looked at our cohort group through data analysis. Sometimes we adopted what they were doing. Other times we worked on innovation from within. So innovation certainly is important to push out education to meet the needs of our students. So we don't want to follow just any path. We want to make sure that our efforts are focused on the way that will augment the hard work our teachers are doing, because teachers work hard and they work to improve the achievement of our students. So we are all working together to build our students' skills for the future through innovation and collaboration. So our focus on STEM has made our students more successful in the classroom. They really enjoy STEM. As we investigate the innovation opportunities in our community and in our schools, we've also worked with a solid continuous program of improvement. And this has helped make my district successful. All of us working together, looking at gaps, looking at data, and making sure that we are on a continuous program of improvement.
Okay, thank you. My third and final question for you is this. How have you addressed the needs of college readiness while also providing high quality, relevant, career-focused opportunities for students?
So one of the responsibilities that we have as educators and school district leaders is to ensure that students are ready for the next steps, whether they're attending college, trade school, or focusing on their career or in the military. So we must use proactive measures to prepare them for tomorrow. So our goal is to continue to help our students improve their skills through career technical programs or academic-based courses. So one of the things I mentioned just shortly earlier was the Jack 3 program. So my students have the opportunity to participate in a career pathway called the Jack 3 program. So we partner with industry and the college so our career-focused students will gain experience and knowledge, and they may accomplish a certificate or, in some cases, an associate's degree. And that goes to a 13th year. Our academically focused students participate in AP courses, which is a traditional way of getting our academically advanced students college credit. But we also have an early middle college, and that's been revolutionary. My school district has taken hold and really loves the early middle college. So some of our students are exiting high school with an associate's degree. All of our students in the early middle college are learning how to navigate the college campus and finding success through this fabulous program. You know, one of the things that's difficult for students as they go to college is that they find that they stub their toe. They're not really sure what's going to happen. But one of the things that we've included in our early middle college is an adjustment class. So they learn about how college works and how you need to contact your instructors. So those things I think are very important as you look at college ready, and putting those students in the program early enough. That's very important. And career focus, our career focused kids, not only do they go to the Career Center, we have an excellent Career Center in Jackson County, but our Jack 3 program has been really revolutionary, giving those students, most of them come out of it with a job at the place where they work and get their internship. So it's pretty exciting to see them succeed in that way.
All right, thank you. We move to our next area, and it's the area of finance, and our treasurer, Jake Singer, will be asking the questions in this area. Jake?
Good evening, Dr. Campbell. Please describe your experience with budget development and financial management, including making difficult budget cuts.
So as a superintendent, I've been in districts where part of the reason that they had a vacancy is because the budget was in shambles. And so I've had a lot of experience, unfortunately, with budget reduction and really innovation within that reduction. So I would say that budget development begins with the needs of individual schools and programs. So gaining insight through focus groups and meetings with staff and community members, that's going to assist in the formation of the new budget. So the development of the budget takes into account possible reductions and looks at each area individually and critically. Data review of the success of each program is as essential as it's evaluated. So as we look at budget development, it's important that we reach out to foundations and institutions for grants to fund important projects and programs and activities. So grants are a good way of augmenting your budget. So in addition, community members are essential with looking for ways to augment the general fund budget. Recently, we just, not that this is a big thing, but we put in a playground that individuals in the community raised $50,000 in order to fund that playground. That's not something that our general fund was going to pay for, but it is very important to reach out for grants and associated ideas. So as I met just recently with individuals and groups during a critical time in my district. So in 2012, when I came to Columbia, the district was in desperate need of budget reduction. Excuse me. And I met with everybody in groups, focus groups, and also if anybody wanted to come and meet with me individually. One of the custodians ended up saving, his idea ended up saving the district $150,000. And when you think about, you need to cut $1 million, $150,000 goes a long ways. So we all use different lenses and we see things in various ways, and we all have different ways of looking at the budget. So it's very important as you look at budget reduction to keep students priority one. So in addition, one of the things that we did and we continue to do is leverage Title I programs and Title II programs and 31A at-risk funds that directly affect the students. So we want to make sure that we provide the additional staffing. These are grants, just like grants that you would apply for. So it's very important to leverage those funds to make sure that they're being used to equitably work with students who need that assistance. So whatever it is, lower student to staff ratio, or add teaching assistants, or just add coaches. So I've done all of those things, and budgeting is one of the things that I've actually become pretty good at. As a former math teacher, budgeting wasn't really anything that I was interested in. Really liked algebra, but not budgeting. But now, as a superintendent who's had an opportunity to really get into budgeting, I enjoy budgeting when things are going up. It's difficult when you have to look at budget cuts, but it's very important as you go along the way, and especially with this budget shortfall and what we're being told is going to happen over the next couple of months.
Thank you. What opportunities do you believe budget limitations present? In tough financial times, what are your top 3 priorities?
Well, my top three priorities are students, students, and students. How's that? So students have to be priority one. So our goal as we work on budget revision is to keep reductions away from the students. So we must accurately use the data to make sure that the decisions protect our children's future. So not only am I looking at priority one, academic priorities, but priority 1.1 or 1A, which would be the second one, would be safety of our students, safety and security for our children. So we must ensure that our students are in a safe environment. So this includes emotional safety as well as physical safety. So far we have academic student achievement is very important, and that the students are in a safe environment. So the third priority is to make sure that we have an inclusive, equitable foundation for our children. So again, children are priority one. So the budget reductions must preserve our ability to give each child an opportunity for success. So when you think about the coaches that work with the children in reading, the interventionists, that's very essential. That's something you don't want to cut, because like I said before, we only had one child at third grade level who wasn't on grade level. So this is a balanced child-centered approach. And this is how I would prioritize students, having them at the center academically, keeping them safe, and making sure that we work with those neediest students.
And my final question, what ideas might you explore to develop more revenue streams for Lake Orion Community Schools? Have you had success in procuring additional funds for your district in your career?
So, thank you, Jake. So procuring, I can't even say it, procuring additional funds through budget cuts is very important. So if we look at thinking about the way that the budget is built, you're going to build from your foundation allowance, but also some special programs. So right now, we have several grants out there that we've written, and I've written grants as well as some of my teacher leaders and my principals in order to help fund those important things, STEM activities, playground activities. We do academic games. We wrote a grant to support our academic games. We wrote a grant to support our summer program. So we must review all of our outreach to various groups and foundations and think about if we're missing anything. Could we get funds from this agency or that agency? United Way, the Community Foundation. So make sure that we explore all additional avenues for programming. Years ago, when I was a principal, we wrote a $1.4 million grant for the county, and we were able to have 21st century learning centers. That revolutionized what I was able to do with my students in after school programming. It was so important. And that's the biggest grant that I've ever had anything to do with. Most of the grants that I've gotten have been $50,000 or less. So if we pilot a program, sometimes it may be less expensive or free. So in the end, that's as good as a grant if you can pilot a program and it's free. Maybe you get free books from a book publisher, something that you really wanted to upgrade to. A solid program of excellence is what you're looking for. You're not looking for something that's going to be fly by night. And you want to make sure if it's a grant that you can afford that grant. So if it's a matching grant, you need to make sure how you're going to match that. So that's successful in procuring grants. I think the more grants that you write, the more successful you are, and making sure that that's something that you focus on, that your teachers know that that's a priority, as far as if they want cool things for their class, sometimes they're going to write a grant. And we've had teachers get really fabulous things through grants.
That's great. Thank you. So we move to our final category questions, and that's related to staff and personnel. And Trustee Steve Dracos will be asking those questions. Steve?
Good evening. Please describe your most successful experience in building a high-performing work team.
Well, thank you, Steve. So it's difficult for me, I think, to identify the most high-performing work team. I've worked in great organizations. There's not one of them that I would hesitate to say was excellent. But let me give you an example. So our pre-K through second grade teachers are a very high-performing work team. So they collaborate and cooperate, and they help build excellence as they work to instill a solid educational base for our littlest of the little, the very small ones. Each of the people on the team have qualities that they share as they work as a team. So they focus on increasing their students' ability, and they seek out proven programs and research-based strategies. So they're a great group to work with. And as the superintendent, I don't work directly with them all the time, but when I have an opportunity to visit their classrooms, work with them on a project, it's so exciting because when you walk into their classroom, they're always doing fabulous things and they're always focusing on the best. And so one of the things that they act as a resource to each other, and they help by coaching and mentoring new teachers. And it's wonderful to work with people who really have that top-notch thinking. So they're always thinking about improvement and success for their students. So probably as far as the high-functioning team, I could list a bunch of them, but that's really a great group of people, and they function as a team, and they really work collaboratively, and it benefits the students in their care.
Thank you. Please speak to your experience in labor relations and working with employee unions, and describes the nature of your relationship with union leaders.
Well, I have great relationships with our leaders of our educational association and our Teamster groups. So I personally negotiated contracts. I think that's helped build a bridge so that we're all on the same page. Collective bargaining gives the district an opportunity to work closely with our most valuable asset and make sure that they know that we improve them, our staff members. So using my core values of honesty, respect, caring, and responsibility, I've been able to collaborate with our associations and bring about positive change. So our work together in a cooperative and collaborative manner while using creative solutions, really thinking out of the box, and I mean thinking way out of the box, has addressed working conditions, non-financial benefits, as well as financial inequities. So in my recent work with Pepperdine University in their dispute resolution program, I've continued to enhance my skills and abilities for creative solutions to solve concerns during negotiations, along with dispute resolution of any type. So mediation, along with negotiation. So my experience in negotiating with groups of employees has allowed me to continue to build trusting relationships that have benefited our district, our staff members, and our students. Recently, during the COVID-19 shutdown, I had one of our leaders of one of the unions call me and said, I just want to check and see how you're doing. I want to check on you and Harold, that's my husband. Check on you and Harold, make sure you guys are doing great. So when you establish a relationship where people just call to check on you, you're doing something right. And I think by having that honesty, caring, responsibility, and making sure that you value other people's time and their concerns, just like you would as your own, and value what they do every day because they're keeping students central in their hearts. I think that helps build that relationship.
Thank you. My final question, but a very important question, is how would you interact with central administrators and building principals in a district of the size of Lake Orion? And how would you strike a balance between giving them the support and independence they need to lead effectively while holding them accountable as appropriate and necessary? So, for a district the size of Lake Orion, I'd have to kind of turn back the clock a little bit and think about, as a teacher, I worked in both Kansas City, Kansas, which is a large district, and Olathe, which is a very large district in Kansas. And so both of those districts, I have to think about how working in a large district works. But my experience in a rural district the size of Columbia gives me an opportunity to really focus in on relationships. So I regularly interact with principals and individuals in the central office. We've built a relationship with mutual respect. So it's important to strike a balance between positive working relationship and holding them accountable. So it's an opportunity that you have. The accountability is an opportunity to set goals for personal growth through positive support and empowerment. Really, it's important to make sure that the principals, your relationship is supportive and empowering, that they have the empowerment to do what they need to do to get the job done. And your goals help build that parameter around that relationship that gives you the opportunity to make sure that you're helping them grow. And as long as, along with empowering them to meet the needs of their students, because again, students, and that's priority one. And you want to make sure that your directors and that your principals are improving the quality of teaching, improving the quality of academics for the students. So I don't know if that was very specific. I think specifically something that needs to be done is always setting goals, because if you set a goal, you're going to work to achieve that goal. We have a great accountability measure in our evaluation system, and we review it throughout the year and make sure that we're still on target to meet those goals and to continue to empower the principal and the director. So I think just really establishing relationships of mutual respect, that's probably the essential thing, and then setting goals to make sure to hold them accountable. And certainly it's a difficult thing if you have to have one of those, hate to say difficult twice in the same sentence, but if you have to have a difficult conversation with somebody, but it's very important, because really what's at risk is our children. So if you have somebody who's really not focusing on their goals and they have other things going on in their lives, you need to make sure that you pull them in and that you carefully and considerately take care of that concern. So over the years, I've had the opportunity to have conversations like that with people that I work with. For the most part, I have really wonderful people and they do a great job. And so empowering them is so easy because they're so wonderful. So, but I think that's kind of around your question, basically trying to balance the encouragement and empowerment with making sure that they're held accountable. Thank you so much for your answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Campbell. At this point, we'd like to take a few minutes to provide you with the opportunity to ask any questions you may have, or to share a closing comment with us.
So I have a couple questions.
Sure.
First of all, as a successful school board, what do you see as the next innovation for the Lake Orion school community?
Well, I'd open that up to our board members, see what their thoughts are. Let me see if I'm missing any raised hands here.
They probably want you to answer it.
Well, maybe. Go ahead.
I got one.
Nate.
Yeah, I think one, and Jim, you've been vocal about this in the past. Also, is looking at a school schedule that is more flexible and even longer duration with more flexibility even into the evenings. And you look at one of the innovative ideas that could come out of a COVID time is how do we distribute the student population if we need space, and looking at how might you do that. And that might be having to get really creative about the way in which students flow in and out of the building and the times of the day and on all of those types of things. Probably not so much in that kind of thinking on programming, but program delivery and accessing it, I think would be a really big piece that we've spent a lot of time on in the past, but haven't had the impetus to put the foot on the gas with it.
Excellent.
That's great. Thanks, Nate. Others? I think that one opportunity we have is along the lines of what Nate said, is that with the multiple perspectives we have to take on delivering education to the students in this district and across the state, across the country with the challenges that we have, I think we have some opportunities baked into that we can take advantage of with some creativity from our staff, our administrators, and experts in the field kind of merging some of those things. And so I would agree with Nate along those lines, even expanding beyond the scheduling, that we have some opportunities that are going to be presented to us. It's our job to take advantage of those.
Well, and I think I just heard today that public television is going to get involved, maybe if we have to repeat the COVID-19 shutdown throughout the year, and that they are working with the governor's task force in order to help provide educational opportunities. So students that don't have a device or don't have connectivities might be able to watch TV, however. And so I know that that's one of the things on the horizon, which is pretty exciting based on what through. So here's my other question. What is the greatest concern moving into the 2020-21 school year?
Go ahead, Jake.
The concern, I mean, I'm treasurer, I'm a finance person by background, that the numbers, the budget, that we have a 10% fund balance. And if the state hits us with a $500 to $700, foundation allowance cut, if a certain percentage of our students don't come back on top of that, our entire fund balance could be consumed trying to deliver the high quality education that we're committed to delivering our students next year. And so that's my bigger concern, is the money. I'm not concerned about, because our commitment to delivering education, in a strange way, we won't let money get in the way. We will make that happen, and we will make sure that the dollars figure themselves out. But it's going to be an incredible challenge, depending on how they do pupil accounting rules, days of instruction, all of the things that are facing us.
But I would echo Jake's comments in that regard. We have no larger challenge than our financial challenge, because without the money, there is no mission. And that's one of the things that we're going to have to tackle and be creative with resources we do have.
I would agree. Yeah, that was an excellent answer. Just, I would agree, the whole 500 to 700. And that's what we budgeted, actually, over the last 8 years, I've been able to build our fund balance to the point where we could handle that kind of cut. But that is exactly what we looked at, and it's very scary if that becomes a reality. It's sad because we need to make sure that our students are priority one. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So in closing,
Please.
so really, I said before, I love the Lake Orion community. I have quite a few friends that live in the greater Lake Orion community. And just driving in over the weekend, it really is for me like I'm coming home. So even with all of the construction traffic, which was pretty fun, just really, I think my experience is an excellent match for the qualifications you're seeking. In this critical time in the state of Michigan, my abilities as a superintendent, really to look outside of the box, think outside of the box, work with community members, board members, teachers, and staff members to look at budgets creatively, really work on making sure that we look at everything and that we focus on the students. So just my experience with public relations, the partnership with parents and the community, the collaboration between teachers and support members, and communication. I think that's very important. Just always talking about points of pride. And one of the things that I've watched Lake Orion is railing the community and using the points of pride that you have. You have beautiful facilities, and I think that my background and my ability to continue that heritage that you have amassed, basically, just the use of social media and continually updating stakeholders. So regarding all the positive things that are happening in Lake Orion. So I'm really, really interested in being the superintendent of Lake Orion. I love the community and I love my friends that live there. And I know that you have wonderful teachers and staff members that work there. And I'm a positive and collaborative leader, and I focus on excellence in education and really team building with the stakeholders. So my experience in improving excellence in education on a budget and team building, I think, is just right for this community at this time. So thank you for having me here today, and just thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Dr. Campbell. We appreciate your interest in the superintendent position for Lake Orion Community Schools. As you're likely aware, the board is interviewing 6 candidates. This is our final interview of the 6 candidates. We plan to conduct our second interviews next week, and we will let you know by tomorrow evening where the process stands and if you'll be joining us for another visit. Again, I want to thank you for your participation in these first round interviews. I wish you well and have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
All right. So let's get here. Are we, it's just us now?
Yep.
All right. So recap and next steps. And before I ask John to say a few words about our next steps tomorrow night, I've already asked John to resend the profile that we developed. So when you are going through all of your information and trying to piece things together, you're going to run it through that prism of what we worked hard on as a board and with community input as to what we're looking for the next superintendent. So with that, I'll turn it over to John.
We talked about how we were going to approach things tomorrow last night, and I can just quickly recap that again. You know, I won't rehash kind of all the pieces of data that you have. You know that, and you now have some time to reflect on all of that and review and be thoughtful in terms of how they match up with your candidate profile and who you think are, of the six, the two best candidates to advance in this process and to remain in contention to be your next superintendent. So at the beginning of the meeting, I would advise that we go around and have each member of the board weigh in with who you think the two candidates are that you would hope to see advance, be able to speak to why, keeping all comments in a positive frame, but then be prepared to listen to your colleagues as well. Keep an open mind as best you can. What it may reveal is that there is already consensus on two people to advance, and it could be easy. If not, we may need to get into a little bit more follow-up dialogue, and if so, I can lead that. But I fully expect that we should be able to identify the two candidates that you would like to see move forward in the process. Simple as that. So you have questions about that?
All right, and then I wanted to add, Julie will be forwarding any other new comments that we have from the community by 10 a.m. tomorrow, correct? And you will have those to add to your mix of information should we get any other comments in. Yes, Birgit.
Jim, could you also review what's going on with the replays of the interviews from this week?
Yes. When we look at what we're doing online versus in person, if we were conducting in-person interviews, there would not be an opportunity for comments for people to review our meeting later on and make comments. It would be restricted to those people who are in the audience and passing cards forward. So too, we're treating the comment period the same way with our online meetings, that comments are coming from individuals who have engaged live with the process and then place their information into the mix. All of the interviews will be made available beginning tomorrow. Or is it tonight, Julie? Tonight. And at that point, all of the recordings will be available for people, but it'll be outside of the period to put in comments, because we ask people to treat this the same way as we treated a live meeting. And that was the purpose of waiting until all of the interviews were completed before we made the recordings available. Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
No, they'll be posted on the superintendent search page that everyone can see.
Okay, great.
On front page.
Great. Yes, Dana.
Okay, so I just want to review the schedule a little bit. Tomorrow night, we'll be choosing two candidates to extend an invitation for a final interview, which will be Monday night, correct? This upcoming Monday?
Yes.
Okay, and then Jim, Scott, and Birgit will do the site visits virtually later that week. Is that correct? And then will those be like in a closed kind of session where would we be allowed to view them while you guys are having that? Does that make sense? Like, I know.
Yes, John.
Okay, so.
Well, so here we're back to, can I presume, by the way, I guess I want to ask the question, and I'm glad you raised it, Dana, but as we look ahead to next week's schedule, are we looking to continue the process virtually?
Yes, we are.
We are, okay.
And we received guidance from legal at MASB that unless you were in the UP or in parts of northern lower Michigan, that meeting in person is still prohibited and will be through the end of June.
Okay.
And we'll get guidance beyond that before the end of June.
So let me go back in order then. So what I've got is that we would be conducting the interviews with the two finalists starting at 6 o'clock on Monday. Remember that second round interviews are scheduled for 60 minutes. So the first one would be at 6 o'clock, and then the next one would start at 7:10. Something else to discuss, though, what we would typically do face to face is we would have the two finalist interviews on two separate nights, have the candidates come in during the course of the day and be meeting with various stakeholder groups who could ask questions, and then they could provide written feedback to the board. What we've done in the last couple of searches that I've facilitated, we've tried to replicate that to some degree, not totally, but virtually. So what we've done, in this case, what we would do is after Monday, we could schedule this for Tuesday and Wednesday or whatever point in the week we'd need to. On one day, we would conduct virtual meetings with some stakeholders and the candidates, and on the other day with the other finalists. The way we handle it there doesn't necessarily have to be exactly the same, but it worked pretty well in both cases. The groups they invited were administrators, and then broadly staff members, and then they had a meeting for community members. Again, in terms of replicating what we did, normally when we would do this face-to-face, I would ask board members not to be present in meetings with administrators and staff members. And I would ask administrators not to be present at the meetings with the staff members, just so people can speak freely, and then they would provide feedback afterward. I would ask the same with the community, but what we've done with the virtual meetings then is we've given kind of codes to log in only to administrators for their meetings, only to staff members for theirs. But with the community meetings, we did treat that a little bit differently. We posted those. And so board members wouldn't participate, but you could log in and you could view what's happening too. And the way they would work is we had asked in advance stakeholders to submit their questions in advance. That gives me a chance to review them, eliminate duplicates, make sure that they're legal, make sure they're appropriate. And then the only two people who would be interacting would be myself and the candidate. I would be asking the questions submitted by stakeholders. I would be reading the name, in some cases, kind of the role, the position, the parent, whatever the case might be. And then the candidate would have a chance to respond, and people from that group would have a chance to log in, hear their questions asked, hear the questions responded to. And we would do that for a 60-minute period of time. Again, I'm not telling you that it has to be done exactly that way. We could certainly discuss it. I will say, though, that it did work quite well. The feedback that we got both from the boards in both districts and even the participants has been pretty positive. So my mindset is why mess with success? We know that worked. It is something
Absolutely.
that we tried very recently. So what we would need to do is identify those 2 days next week, make sure we're in agreement on the stakeholder groups that we would be inviting. And then I would be looking at probably Julie and Mark to assist. I communicate with them in terms of how we would get the word out to those groups. And you would need also to provide a way for them to submit questions. How would they do that and to where? And I would need to have access to those. And then obviously we would need to have meeting links established for those various meetings with each of the two finalists in those groups. A lot to chew on. Does that make sense?
It does. So would it make sense for Julie and I to talk tomorrow about the logistics of it? Bring that back tomorrow evening for board discussion and finalizing it, and then we will have a plan by the end of tomorrow night's meeting. That makes sense to everybody?
So what I can do as well, I'll send a sample schedule to Julie so she can have that in hand.
That'd be great.
Okay. And then
All right, Scott, you had a question?
So when I volunteered to take on that role of doing the site visits, I wasn't working and I'm back to work. I've got no problem doing it if we can do it in the evenings, realizing that it's going to take a lot of time. So that being said, if somebody else wants to do it, cool. If we can make it where it's, after work time, that would work too. I would really like to do it, but I can't, eat up 3 days of work.
Well, John?
Normally, we do
Handle
schedule these during the workday. It might be a little bit more difficult to get participation that we'd like to see if we did it in the evening. And I'm not sure about that, by the way.
Why don't we chat about it tomorrow and see what our possibilities are? And if we can do it in the evening, Scott will keep you on the docket. And if it makes more sense to do it during the day, that we'll find a sub for you, and we'll go from there.
Okay, and then for the site visits, this gets back, Dana, it's taken me a long time to get back to your question, but I didn't forget. When we've done this virtually, what has worked out well about doing it virtually is we still have 3 board members participate so that there's not a quorum. It's not a meeting that has to be posted, but it could be recorded just like these have been recorded, right? So then you could make those recordings available to the 4 board members who are not directly participating, which really has worked out great. Normally you'd ask the 3 to do a written summary, but that's not even necessary now because the other 4 will be able to watch it and see and hear everything for themselves. Yeah, it works out well.
Sounds good. All right, any other questions for John before we close the night out? Again, I want to extend my thanks to everybody here. It's been a full week. It's not over. We have some work ahead of us, but I think we've represented Lake Orion Community Schools well to these candidates and put our best foot forward. And now it's our job to move forward with the process. So thank you all. Yes, John?
I apologize. One thing I forgot to mention was I'll be sending that candidate profile as requested, but if not tonight, tomorrow morning, I'll be sending just a very brief summary of, I've done some initial reference checks.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it certainly has not been as thorough as it will be once we get down to finalists, but it still could be helpful to you just to get a sense of what I've been hearing. When I do this, I do try to target key people, at least a couple in each district, who I think are going to give me a pretty good representation. So be on the lookout for that coming as well.
Great. Thank you, John. Yes, Julie.
Just wondering also, I know I've been trying to keep you updated on the feedback forms as they are coming in. And we did receive quite a few today since you've had your last update. So I'm going to send that off to you tonight with what's come in until now. I'm wondering at this point, would it be helpful to start sorting that by candidate? Does anybody get some feedback on that?
I think that would be helpful.
Okay. So I will get that to you tonight. And then as we are using the timeline of 10 a.m. tomorrow, I will have the last update for you shortly after that.
That's great. All right. Any other questions? None being heard. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.